Okay, so we have arrived at 10 a.m. So good morning to you all who have joined so far. A few more coming along, so thank you. You're very welcome. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Sarah Lewis, and I work in client engagement and marketing within the NetThreat team. So this morning we're going to be looking at cybersecurity awareness, exploring the human challenge in cybersecurity. So first of all, I'd like to introduce our expert panel today. So we have Nihil from uSecure. Good morning, Nihil. Thank you for joining us also.
Morning, Sarah. Yeah, it's great to be here, and thanks everyone for making the time.
No, thank you for your time. And we also have Dan from our team here at NetThreat. Good morning, Dan.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for joining. You'll have to excuse me this morning. The wonders of technology, my camera doesn't want to work this morning. So I am here.
Welcome, Dan. Okay, so I'd like to ask Nihil just to sort of give us a few words about himself, if I may, to start.
Yeah, of course. So again, my name's Nihil. I work for uSecure. So I've been at uSecure for almost 6 years now. So that means basically every day for the last 6 years, I've been speaking with customers about the type of challenges they face when it comes to human risk in cybersecurity. So seeing how those threats have evolved, seeing what type of gaps people tend to have in their organizations, and coming up with plans to try and minimize those with them.
Thanks, Nihil. And maybe a few words from you as well, Dan. I know a lot of people joining us will have spoken to you previously.
Yeah, so I'm Dan. Some of you might know me. I'm one of the account managers here at NetThreat. So I've been with NetThreat just over 3 years now. My kind of specialty background is Sonic War, but I work very closely with Nihil with the uSecure product. So what that means is that NetThreat can also offer backup and help with installations, ongoing troubleshooting, etc. We can obviously do pricing, demos. So yeah, we'll hopefully we'll wait till the end, and then I'll give a little bit more information about what we can offer.
Thank you, Dan. So just a bit of housekeeping. We are scheduled to finish at 10:30. I know everyone's time is very precious at the moment. We will be recording the session and we will be making that available on demand. I appreciate also that we're getting into the holiday period, so not everyone is able to make it today. We will have a Q&A at the end, and microphones currently muted, but they will be unmuted for that. Or of course, you can chat to us on the online chat facility. So I'll crack on now and hand over to Nihil. Thanks, Nihil.
Thanks, Sarah. Lovely. Okay, so before we sort of go into, I guess, the detail about what we do and how we do it, I think it's important to give a bit of background as to the actual challenge that we're facing. So again, everything that we're talking about today is about human risk. It's all about understanding gaps in your staff members' awareness levels and then giving you the tools to minimize those gaps. Before we can go through that and sort of explain the best routes to minimize that risk, it's important to understand the scope of the challenge that we're facing. So we just have a few stats here just to sort of set the scene. I imagine a lot of you are well aware about different threats when it comes to cybersecurity. That's probably why you're here. But at the same time, the stats can still be quite a jolt to see it laid out in plain text. So 74% of all breaches involve the human element. So essentially, when we look at helping employees, there's only around a quarter of cyber breaches where some sort of security awareness program couldn't have had a positive impact. So it's clear there's a massive gap when it comes to human awareness, and a lot of scope for us to help start improving those vulnerabilities. Now, 36% of breaches involve phishing, and that's 11% more than 2022. That is quite a conservative number. You see some reports say that's even higher. Phishing is the main route that people are concerned about. It's the most visible threat. It's the one that tends to get the headlines. And the stats show that the number of phishing attacks and the percentage of them is going up year on year. So clearly, if we're all very well aware of phishing, and it's something which we've been conscious of for years now, but the stats show that they're getting more effective, clearly something isn't quite right when it comes to our resilience to it. And also what we're finding is compliance bodies are now getting more and more involved when it comes to cybersecurity awareness and different programs that you have in place. So obviously GDPR was a bit of a milestone when that came through, and now we're seeing other certifications and regulatory bodies becoming more and more concerned about this. So more organizations are going for ISO 27001 certification or Cyber Essentials Plus certification. A lot of clients are expecting us to have these type of things in place. And also cyber insurance is becoming a bigger player. Premiums are getting more expensive, and often ways to reduce your premiums is by having dedicated security awareness measures in place. So it seems like the external sort of pressure on these type of programs is only going to increase. So it's a good time to get ahead of the curve and start implementing a program before it essentially becomes mandated. So it's important to take stock of why employees are at risk. We've seen the stats, but what are the fundamental factors behind those risk levels? And I've broken it down here into three core elements. The first one is that threats are evolving. So like I mentioned at the start of the session, I've been at uSecure for around 6 years, almost 6 years now. We naturally speak to companies day in, day out that have had different incidences or have spotted phishing attacks and have luckily been proactive, but are concerned about whether that will still be spotted by another staff member if it happens again later down the line. We see phishing attacks in particular have got much more sophisticated in the last 18 months in particular compared to 4 or 5 years ago. So spear phishing is quite a common route whereby attackers will make their attack on your organization really personalized. Personalization is the absolute key to getting a response from an end user because it feels more relevant to them. So what we're finding is these attacks are now getting more sophisticated, and a large reason behind that is the amount of dark web data that's out there on everyone. The dark web is often quite an abstract phrase. People don't always understand that it relates to them in the day-to-day, in the sense that companies get breached every day. Large companies, huge companies have cyber attacks, and the databases that they have on their client base often get made publicly available on the dark web. Attackers know that there's a lot of data out there. They know there's a lot of accessible information on things like passwords that we use, or security questions that we set, or physical addresses. All of that information is just gold dust to them to then build a more personalized attack. So you might have been experiencing this yourself. You might have noticed that the type of phishing attacks you're getting are not so generic anymore. They're a lot more targeted. So it's important that we can sort of take stock about why that is and obviously help to remediate that risk. What links with this as well is that there is quite commonly a lack of effective training. It's time consuming to create training yourself. It's time consuming to deliver the training. A lot of companies still struggle to go beyond just doing maybe onboarding training with a new staff member. Maybe when you get a new staff member, they get a PowerPoint presentation which covers all the fundamentals in cyber, maybe takes them a few hours to complete, and then they move on. In reality, 6 months from then, is that staff member any more secure for that training? Or have they just reverted back to their sort of, easier routes, which often are less secure? So what we find is that the training hasn't really evolved. A lot of people still do training in the same way that they did 4 or 5 years ago, but the threats have evolved massively. So the difference between the sophistication of attacks and the level of awareness of the end users has just been growing consistently. And that's why we see that phishing percentage go up from 25% last year to 36% the previous year. What also links with that is a lack of processes. So quite often employees think, well, the IT team or our MSP, for example, have been putting together different infrastructure things. I've had to download antivirus on my machine. So because that infrastructure is in place, I as an employee, I'm in a safe environment. I don't have too much of a responsibility. We find that then leads to gaps in their awareness levels because they can get a little bit complacent. So a lot of companies struggle to get policies in place for things like remote working or setting a secure password. These are fundamental things that staff members have a responsibility to be aware of and to be proactive about. And linking back to the previous slide, when we talk about external bodies being more concerned about these type of things, they are becoming more and more vigilant as to what policies people have in place and whether staff members are being asked to opt into those policies. So if we can get policies in place that reinforce the staff members that they have certain responsibilities with this, it becomes a shared responsibility. It's no longer just up to the IT team to make sure that the infrastructure is safe. End users are made aware that they also have certain responsibilities that they need to follow to be a bit more vigilant. So now that we've sort of taken scope of the sort of general issue and some of the fundamental reasons behind that issue, I want to touch on how we can transform employees into a cyber asset. It's important to note as well that we don't have to be overly intense with this program. We don't need to try and make people technical whizzes. We don't need to completely detract from their day job. Ideally, we want a system where it will just plug into your normal processes and staff members get reinforced regularly without having to take time out of their actual day job. So it's one of those elements where this is becoming increasingly important, but it's a relatively easy fix once you have the right processes and program in place. So one of the key things which I touched on earlier is having a robust training program in place. Now, a lot of you on this call, I imagine, have looked into awareness training previously. A lot of you probably have LMSs that do things like health and safety training or compliance training. Training isn't the most naturally exciting thing. Like, staff members often look for excuses not to do it. That doesn't mean that training isn't vital, but we need to be savvy and we need to be aware of not pushing it too far and finding programs that people will actually engage with. So when it comes to cybersecurity training, traditionally it's a 2-hour-long session, like I mentioned earlier. It's often full of technical jargon, and it's often not personalized. So everybody does the same training course at the same time. We tick a box off and then we move on. In reality, it's important to remember that we're talking about human risk. Between us on this call, we each have our own blind spots when it comes to cybersecurity. It's such a broad-ranging topic. We need to understand individual nuances, because until we understand those nuances, they could be vulnerabilities that we leave unchecked. So one of the key processes that we have in uSecure is the idea of personalized training. So we want to move beyond the traditional approach and really try to bore into the individual gaps your staff members might have and help them out with them. So there's a 3-step process which I'll run through when it comes to personalized training. The first thing we want to do is evaluate each of your users. So again, when we're talking about human risk, everybody has their own blind spots. So the very first thing we'll do is use a gap analysis questionnaire to understand each of your staff members' own weaknesses. So that quiz will take 15 minutes to complete. So it's not too intensive. It's not going to take them a whole afternoon. And it's simply designed to figure out where their starting point is. So you might be able to see with this sample spider diagram here, we ask them questions on topic like phishing or secure passwords or remote working, the kind of fundamentals which apply to every company. Now, we'll then get a profile based on each user, so we then know which topics they need more urgent attention with. And this will be done for each individual staff member. Step 2 is to then educate your users. So we create personalized programs for each individual user, and we will systematically deploy training courses to them, prioritizing their weakest topics. So, for example, if my weakest area was phishing, the system would pick that up from the gap analysis and it would send me phishing training first. If my next lowest topic was cloud security, I would receive that next. If my next weakest topic was secure passwords, that would be the third course that I receive. But Dan might have a different profile, so he might receive social engineering training first. The system will plot these programs for you automatically and then deploy them for you as well over time. The training courses are a 3-minute long video and then a quiz at the end. We don't want to make this overly intense for your staff members because they just simply won't engage with it. So because we build all of the training courses ourselves, they're nice and consistent in the tone, in the length, in the type of characters that we show in the training videos as well. So people very quickly get into a habit of doing the training courses. But the idea is, if we say we do monthly training, every single month your staff members receive a 3-minute long video and a quiz on that topic. So we do bite-sized continual reinforcement to make sure that they actually engage with the training and that they actually change their behaviors. You know, it's important to remember that the end result of this isn't just to tick a box. It's to make sure that when practical applications arise, people have the knowledge and the habits in place to act more securely. And finally, we want to calculate risk. One of the things that are very tricky with security programs is to measure progress. So in the system, we'll use calculations and algorithm to figure out both individual and company-wide human risk. So as you do more training courses, as your staff members score more highly on the quizzes, we will tell you how your risk score is decreasing over time. So very good for audits to show that you're being proactive and that you have these measures in place. So building on this, another key process is complete automation. One of the things that's absolutely vital when it comes to security program is making sure that you are covering all bases. That's both on an individual user basis, but also on a cyber threat basis. So with individual users, it's important to remember that anybody that has access to a work email is a potential vulnerability point. So it's important to make sure that you don't have anybody that's left unchecked with the program. You know, whether they're the CEO or they are temp staff, it doesn't matter. They are still people that could have access to systems and that could therefore be attacked. So it's important to remember that you are as vulnerable as your most vulnerable user. So we need a comprehensive solution, a comprehensive program, which everybody will buy into. The second point is about covering all facets of cybersecurity. So whilst training is absolutely crucial and it's a very quick and effective fix, there are multiple routes in cybersecurity which we need to be aware of. So it's important to have a comprehensive continual program to make sure that we're monitoring all of these different threat vectors, again, without being too intrusive, and then giving you the data to know where your gaps are. So I'll go through a bit of a step-by-step process here to explain the workflow of the entire uSecure program. So step one, we want to make sure that we're ticking off that box of comprehensive for all of your staff members. So we integrate with Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace to ensure that the uSecure user list is up to date every single day. So the team at NetThreat are very well experienced with making sure that your AD will pull into uSecure correctly. So that means every single day, the uSecure platform will check your Microsoft account and check for any new users. So if you have a new starter who joins the organization, you don't have any background as to their cyber awareness levels. You know, naturally, you don't know what their previous company was deploying to them. So with this integration, we can make sure that any new starters get automatically added to uSecure based on the config, and then we can make sure they're enrolled in the program from there. That way, you don't accidentally go 3 months without deploying a security awareness program to a new staff member. Next step, key training will be deployed. So again, that touches on the personalized training element that I talked about. When a new staff member is added into uSecure, we will send the gap analysis to them straight away. We'll build the personalized program, and then we'll deploy the training program over time as well. So again, you don't have to have any sort of concerns about a new staff member. As part of their onboarding process, they now get enrolled in the uSecure program, and you start to build that profile on them and then minimize that risk over time. We then couple that with scheduled phishing attacks. So phishing has been a recurring theme throughout this presentation. It's absolutely vital that we can understand your staff members' vulnerabilities to phishing attacks in a safe environment. This isn't a case of naming and shaming. This isn't a case of trying to catch people out for the sake of it. It's simply a case of trying to understand vulnerabilities before an attacker could exploit them. Also, just from being proactive, you know, if you get audited, being able to show that you're running these phishing campaigns is a massive benefit to you as an organization. So within uSecure, we have hundreds of phishing templates loaded. These include things like Microsoft, they include other business-related services, they have lifestyle-related services, so we can even do things like personal shopping accounts, government updates. We also have internal-looking emails. So the CEO asking somebody in finance to buy gift cards and asking them to purchase 20 gift cards worth £20 each and to email over the serial code of each. A really common phishing attack, one that often gets quite a heavy response. But again, it's important to make sure that you are taking note about what type of attacks you're seeing land in your inbox, maybe speaking to others in your industry and seeing what type of threats they're experiencing, and then mimicking those threats in a safe environment. We will then tell you when each person opened the email, when they clicked on the link within the email, and when they gave away their password. So you have a very clear step-by-step visualization of each person's own engagement. We can even set up the system so that if somebody does engage with it and somebody does give away their password, we can send them a purpose-built training video that says, you've been caught in a phishing campaign. You need to make sure that you're looking out for these type of red flags so this type of thing doesn't happen in reality. So it's an incredibly effective way to keep monitoring that risk. Now, we also have a policy management tool included in the system which can deploy key policies to your staff members. So I mentioned this earlier about how a lot of companies just don't have policies in place around remote working, email usage, correct password structure, all of these type of things which are becoming more and more expected. And again, third parties are more interested in seeing that you have them in place. Managing policies manually is an absolute pain. It often relies on one person, often it's not their actual job, to draw up policies like the company handbook, send it to staff members, to chase them up if they haven't signed the document, to find some way of logging that signature, and then, again, if they get audited, to have some way of proving that people have opted in. There are a lot of steps there that require a lot of manual work, which naturally then means the admin time increases and the chance of human error and just simply forgetting to send a new staff member your ethics policy increases. With the policy management tool in uSecure, we have policy templates available already for you. You can also upload your own documentation into the system with a PDF import. The software will then be configured, again, by the team at NetThreat according to your preferences, and we can make sure that every staff member receives your company handbook through uSecure. It will then tell you when people view the document and when they give their online signature. So you then have a clear audit that proves each person signed the document on this date. We can even configure the software so that it asks people to opt in again semi-regularly. So every year or every 2 years, they get asked to view your company handbook and confirm that they consent to what it tells them as well. So again, all of this then feeds into, if you have a new starter, you can be safe that they are receiving all of your key documentation through uSecure. Next, we will monitor the dark web for email breaches. I mentioned earlier when we talked about the evolving threats, about how the dark web is a really valuable resource for attackers. Just the sheer amount of data on there, the amount of tooling that makes it easy to find that data now is astonishing. And they can use that information to their benefit to then build more personalized attacks. In uSecure, we will monitor against your staff members' email addresses, and we will see if we can find them in public data breaches. So we can see if your head of HR has been involved in different breaches, and we will tell you what breaches we found that email in and what information was exposed in that breach. So you then know that they might have been involved in 5 breaches where their password was leaked 5 times. People often reuse passwords across different sites, and if they've used the same password for Canva that had a breach as they do for your Microsoft Teams channel, attackers try that combination, find their way into your network, and then send malicious links through Teams, which is very hard to spot. So being proactive, monitoring those emails means that you guys get ahead of the curve, you find that data, and you make it redundant before an attacker uses it against you. And finally, we then have continual reporting. So we weave all of this together and we can send you regular reports that tell you things like your course completion rates, your overall risk score. We contextualize the data in the system in a nice digestible way so you can see exactly how the program is being engaged with and how it's helping your company to become more secure. So I'll pass over to NetThreat again so Dan can go through some of the extra detail about how they can help you out with this as well.
Thank you, Neil. Yeah, that was really good. And hopefully, as you can all see, it's a very, very comprehensive solution that we can offer with uSecure. As Nahil mentioned, kind of we're only as secure as our weakest link. So making sure that all of our staff members are completely up to date and understand the risks that are out there, I think is becoming key to keeping everybody secure. Just on top of kind of what Nahil said, we at NetThreat can offer support around this. We can offer help with installations, ongoing support, etc., pricing, demos. So hopefully, if anybody does need anything after this, please do reach out. I'll be happy to help out with anybody. Anything to do with the uSecure product, but also we can also do the Sonic Wall and the WatchGuard products alongside that as well. So yeah, thank you very much for your time, everybody. I'll just hand back to Sarah.
Thank you both. Has anyone got any questions, either verbally or via the chat, that they'd like to ask either Nihal or Dan? You'd be very welcome to do that. Actually, I've just got one quick one coming through now. How do we ensure that staff actually engage with this program, Nihal?
Yeah, obviously a really, really important one. There's no point in having training in place if people don't actually do it. Yeah, so communication is really, really important. If you get the communication right at the start, people then understand that it's something that they actually have to engage with. So it's important to get senior management buy-in. If staff members know that their engagement with the program is actually going to be monitored, then they actually will engage with it. As soon as they think it's optional to complete a training course, people won't do it. So we have templates available which we can obviously help you with NetThreat to communicate to your staff members that explains why they're doing the program, how it will benefit them, and what the program actually entails. When people hear they're doing new training, they often can just assume it's going to be overly long and technical. So it's important that you set the expectations that it's going to be easy to engage with, it's going to be non-intrusive, and it's actually a business critical thing. You then tend to get the buy-in. And also we can do things like keep managers in the loop so that they know every week which of their members have outstanding courses. So they can then just make sure they get in the habit of doing them nice and quickly.
Thank you. Thank you for that one. Anyone else? Any questions for Dan or Pete? No? Nihal, another one. Sorry, I feel like I'm taking over on the questions that's come through. How often are the courses updated? Could you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, so again, we have our own content team, so they build the training courses in-house. We have an internal policy to review each module every quarter, but we release new courses, like multiple ones each month, and then make tweaks to training courses as and when we see fit. So it's a pretty regular thing.
And another question, what are the licensing options? Maybe this is probably one that Dan could answer. Thank you for the question.
So we've got a couple of different options for licensing. So it's tiered between the number of users or number of mailboxes that you're looking to support. But what we can actually do is we offer 2 tiers of pricing. So we offer a supported and non-supported price. So with the non-supported, that would mean that you would do all of the configuration, setup, etc., and ongoing changes. With the supported options, we can help out with all of those sort of changes and adding users, etc., ongoing questions. So we can add that level in as well. What I can do is get you over some pricing after I've got your details, so I can get some pricing over after this call.
Okay, and a few more questions coming through. Integration with 365. What license tier do you need for this? Seeing a lot of necessary security features in 365 are behind either Business Premium or even E5, and most of SMEs simply cannot afford that.
So the integration just relies on you having licensed users. So you don't need an E5 license or anything like that. You can be on essentially quite a entry-level Microsoft 365 package, as long as your users are hosted on Azure AD and they have licensed accounts, we can pull them through into uSecure. So there's no need for like E5 license or anything like that.
Thank you, Nihal. And a further question, do user aliases for the same mailbox consume multiple licenses?
No.
Okay.
So it's just pulling through the individual core email address. Aliases don't get duplicated.
Okay, That's great. So I don't think we have any more questions coming through at the moment, but as always, most of you know our team here at NetThreat. So any questions, feedback, or anything else we can help with, please reach out, give us a call. And I'd just like to finish by thanking you all for your time this morning, and thank you to Nahil and Dan. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.